Friedrich Nietzsche got given the nickname the philosopher with a hammer due to his many harsh criticisms of classic ancient philosophy that was left mostly unquestioned at the time, making him now one of the greatest philosophers to date because of the ideas he introduced, such as what you believe and everyone claims to be the truth isn't actually the objective truth, including this video. If Nietzsche was alive today, he would have a lot to say about the ex-kickboxer Andrew Tate, pointing out blatant flaws in the ideology he follows and subsequently influences onto the young men that watch his content. To therefore understand what Nietzsche would say about this multi-millionaire that sells the idea of living in the real world, we must start at the beginning. Nietzsche was born in the year 1844 and brought up in a devout Christian household. He began to question this faith that was installed onto him as he grew up. Triggered by his father, a man who was committed to praising God, got diagnosed with a terminal brain disease. For a year he had to suffer in pain with this, to then die at the age of only 35. Later the following year, his brother Ludwig ended up dying in addition, kickstarting Nietzsche's pessimism. Nietzsche consequently had a lonely and somber childhood, before later going on to study philology at university, where he showed strong intellectual promise, later becoming the youngest professor to ever be hired at the university, still to this day. However, he left this position soon after, due to the heavy constraints he felt academia placed onto him, beside his increasingly poor health, which had bothered him for most of his life. Instead, he moved to the Swiss Alps, where he lived a lonely, depressive life due to the many other tragic events that unfolded, spending the majority of his time thinking, walking, and reading. Philosophy became one of the only things that pulled him forward, writing many famous books during this time, such as Beyond Good and Evil and The Genealogy of Morals. One of his most popular ideas was the will to power. This was the idea that there was an insatiable desire to gain power, not necessarily in the monetary or physical sense, but gaining it over oneself. This can be done through manipulating the objective truth, distorting it to instead make it a reflection of your own personality and experiences, being no truth at all, but instead an assertion of power. As to say a belief is true, increases the power you feel as the one who holds it. In this sense, there is no truth in itself, only various interpretations made by power-hungry individuals seeking to monopolize and dominate ideology with their own idea of what is true. This theory in itself is paradoxical. Nietzsche used the idea to criticize many famous works of philosophers before him, such as that of Immanuel Kant, who lived by the same routine every day and never left his hometown. In accordance to this, Nietzsche says that this is what then led to his boring and rigid philosophical ideas. The same way Spinoza, a Dutch philosopher, used mathematical equations to explain his truth, but only did so in order to make up for his weak character. The will to power in this way can be used to adopt or discover a truth that suits you best and hiding faults in yourself. This idea can be applied to many contemporary examples, such as that of Tate, who has a pick and mix assortment of beliefs based on what is most convenient for him. An example of this is his opinions of polygamous relationships, advocating that it is only right that men like him are able to have multiple partners at the same time due to his wealth and social status. Therefore, as he has an abundance of such a thing, that instead of choosing the monogamy approach that require more discipline and abstinence of selfish pleasure on his end, he instead chose that which would be the most favorable to him, having not weighed the potential impact that this may have on the women he is with, while simultaneously stating that it is disgusting for a woman to be with multiple partners at the same time. He has a human bias to do what suits him best rather than to gain the objective truth of what is right or wrong. He then proclaimed this as being the correct way of life to everyone else, gaining dominance over what is true. In addition to this idea, you can see a similar pattern of selectiveness with the Stoic philosophy he chooses to live by, adopting those of hard work, which he uses to gain material wealth, whilst being something that requires delayed gratification, ultimately allows for further impulsive indulgences later on, avoiding other values such as not complaining and status being measured on the quality of someone's soul rather than material wealth, demonstrated by his famous line, "What color is your Bugatti?" as a way of belittling those who are not as wealthy as him, being a massive contradiction to core Stoic teachings. A quote from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations states that only philosophy can guide us, which means making sure that the power within stays safe and free from assault, superior to pleasure and pain, doing nothing randomly or dishonestly and with imposture. For Tate to then identify as a Stoic is a form of imposture in itself, as he is not superior to pleasure and has done many questionable things that make him dishonest, such as charming women into liking him, with the intention to then recruit them into his webcam business. Despite all this video is not to say that Tate is wrong in what he sees to be the truth, but instead to uncover the selective nature of the principles he lived by. These biases can then be taken into account if you decide to follow him, or anyone else for that matter.